Thanks everyone for coming out again for our second day of this ICDA Scientific Plenary and Launch. Thanks especially for getting here at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm Rachel Liao. I'm really excited to kick off our second day today. I am at the Broad Institute. I'm a scientific advisor in the executive office at the Broad, and I have there's a lot of exciting work ongoing in this space, as you all know. I've been working in big data storage and management and access and use, and thinking about how we can come together as a community and really utilize the data sets that have been developed and that are being developed for communal benefit. So I think to get us started, I want to come back to the central premise of why we're all here. We've come together here to work together as a community to make progress accelerating our understanding of the functional and physiological impact of the genetics of common disease. We've been calling this the M2M2M challenge, asking as a community, how can we make progress, releasing the bottlenecks that have been accumulating to move from maps to mechanisms to medicine. We began yesterday with a series of excellent talks, really laying out some of the challenges that have been identified in cohorts, in variant to function to mechanism, in the process of translation and in the engagement with healthcare systems. And this is really why we're all here. And so I think the hope for today will be that we'll be able to continue this discussion and really make some progress toward what next actionable steps might be to engage the community, to come together and really define some proposals, recommendations for work that can make some progress here. So I will get us started by just welcoming everyone. It's been really great to have everyone here. I've personally felt very privileged to engage with all of you on these on these 2 days, especially because you've received so many emails from me, and it's just great to make that connection. I've just been very excited to see how much engagement there has been. That there are so many folks who have come from so far. Look at everybody; we're such a great-looking group, and I think that the discussion has really been an indicator of how enthusiastic and engaged members of this community, even from very diverse global regions and backgrounds, are. We're really excited. I'm really excited to continue what we began yesterday, discussing these next steps. So that's what I'm going to talk about for a little bit. First, I want to give you a couple meeting statistics, because these make me really excited as we've been thinking about putting this together. We've had 168 total participants who have attended this meeting. Not everyone has attended both days, but overall, that's how many we've seen. We've had a really great breakdown of gender, of countries and institutions that have been represented in this institutional number. The NIH as a whole is counted as one institution. So we really have had quite a lot of institutes from around the world who are here. And very excitingly, as a lot of you know, we've been webcasting. And we had over 300 virtual attendees yesterday, so we really had more than double the number of virtual attendees that we had in person, which I think also speaks to just the enthusiasm around the globe for this work, moving this M2M2M challenge forward, even for folks who we know were not able to join us today. I do want to give you a couple of opportunities to engage with us after this meeting online. We do have a website, ICDAbio, and you can find us there. We have, this is the homepage, which I think turned out great. At the bottom of the homepage, there's this link to sign up for our mailing list. Now, if you're here, and it looks like this, if you're here, then you are on our mailing list. You know that because you've received hundreds of emails, it seems like, from me or from someone in my office. But especially for folks who are joining us via live stream or who just want to ensure that we have the right email address on file for them, please do sign up here to be on our mailing list. And this is going to be how we communicate with folks who are interested over the next couple of months. We are also on Twitter. I know there are several Twitter influencers here today and online, of course. We have an @ICDAbio handle, and we have a meeting hashtag. We've also been using hashtag ICDAbio. Please do engage with us there. That's an exciting forum where we can really make use of the global community's expertise and input sort of in real time. All right, so now, what's next for ICDA? The organizing committee met last night to discuss plans for ICDA, and I'm here to report back on some of the outputs of that meeting. This, again, is the organizing committee for the ICDA. You know almost everyone who everyone on this list is here with us at this meeting, and you all know these folks. They're distinguished scientists from their respective institutions, from their respective fields in their global regions, and it's been really my privilege to work with them as a group to bring all of this together. Overall, we have 34 members representing 15 countries, which is pretty exciting. And this group has the overall responsibility for ICDA's policies, for the decisions that are recommended, including oversight of activities that are going to take place in ICDA working groups. And so I'm going to talk through a little bit of what that's going to look like, especially over the next couple of months. This is the organizing committee again. We went to Helsinki in the spring, and we proposed a white paper, which I trust you have all read, all 45 pages of it. And this is really why we're all here. We're excited to discuss the next steps that were laid out at the end of that document. And this group has really been instrumental in pulling all of that together over the last several months. Okay, so I'm going to talk through three broad categories of next steps for ICDA. And then after this, we can have a little bit of discussion if there are any questions, that kind of thing. So to start, to get work done, how are we going to get work done? We will get work done in working groups. As I mentioned, we have an organizing committee, which I just mentioned. There will be three, at least for right now, our proposal is that there will be 3 scientific working groups for MAPS, for mechanisms and for medicine. You should be recognizing that theme. We also hope to have cross-cutting working groups that will be able to inform the work that's undertaken in all of the scientific working groups, including data platforms. We'll hear about some of the topics in that cross-cutting group a little bit later today, as well as strategies and considerations for data sharing, data governance, ethics, the topics that Bartha Knoppers is here today will be speaking about, and what's necessary across the scientific working groups for the proposals that are recommended in ICDA. We'll also have councils to engage with key stakeholder groups, and I'll talk about that just a little bit in a minute, but these will also be cross-cutting in the sense that these members of these councils will be encouraged to engage in the different scientific working groups and the cross-cutting working groups to really be a part of this community, thinking about what recommendations we hope to put forward and the work we hope to do. So I'll start just describing the scientific working groups very briefly. We've named co-chairs for each of these groups, whom you can see here. These are members of our organizing committee. They will be really working very hard over the next couple of months to seek input from the ICDA community to make recommendations for foundational resources and projects, and I'll talk about that in just a second. The cross-cutting working groups are listed here. We do have co-chairs for the data platforms cross-cutting working group, and we are actively working to identify and to invite co-chairs or members of the community who can really lead our data sharing, data governance, and ethics goals that we have for the work we do in ICDA. And then, as I mentioned, we have stakeholder councils, a funders council, which is co-chaired by Michael Dunn and Carolyn Hutter, and then a biopharma council co-chaired by Sally John and Mark McCarthy. Again, these are councils that are going to be forums to engage key stakeholder groups to come together to learn about ICDA work and to align with the work of ICDA. They're, as I said, able to join and welcome and invited to join all working groups. And ultimately, with the goal, all of these working groups, all of these individuals who are engaged have a goal of proposing and then working to accomplish and address foundational scientific resources, collaborative scientific projects that will be of benefit, we believe, to the community, to the global community, thinking about common disease genetics and all that that means in the different regions and the different populations. We have a vision to produce ICDA white paper version 1.0. The goal is to develop that in the next several months. I think as you all saw in the draft that was distributed to you, we are still at version 0.1. We have not completed especially chapter 3, which really lays out the recommendations, or is intended to lay out the recommendations for work done in the ICDA that falls into these categories: foundational scientific resources and collaborative scientific projects. So the goals for white paper version 1.0 are, as we said, to propose recommendations for important foundational resources and projects to help solve the M2M2M challenge, to really release some of the bottlenecks that we've identified yesterday and that we'll continue to discuss today, as well as to include, to ensure that we're pursuing and including input from the global community to make sure that we're recommending and working toward a diversity of projects and resources that will really enable us to engage with genetics efforts around the world. And so that's where we're really hoping for a very broad input and a broad engagement with folks in this space. Working groups will be sending requests for input in the next few months, and so I really hope you will send us your ideas. I think that this will be most successful if we get a really broad representation and engagement with the global community in the development of these recommendations for the white paper. I think we can all see the bottlenecks of how to translate the variants into function and into mechanism toward the pursuit of translational therapeutic targets and our understanding of biological pathways from different perspectives given our backgrounds. And so I really genuinely do hope that you will all engage very meaningfully with this process. I think that'll make us more successful. Okay, I'll briefly touch on the idea of membership. This is a question we've been getting a lot, and I'll just describe quickly that ICDA membership will be open to everyone. We do not have currently a mechanism for signing up specifically for membership. That'll be coming in hopefully the next month or two. And so that's something where if you are on our mailing list, you'll receive information about that when it's available. But for now, what I want to make sure is very clear is that members will receive regular ICDA newsletters. They'll receive agenda and live stream information for all ICDA meetings. If you've enjoyed this meeting, then hopefully you'll be able to join us in the future. And members will be able to sign up as associates of working groups, which will enable working groups to reach out to those individuals and ask for input and receive input from folks who are actually interested in that content area. So as I said, there is a sign up for our mailing list. If you have not been getting emails from me, then we don't have you on our mailing list. If you have been and you want to sign up with a different email, please do that. We'll be emailing when there is a membership page or a membership portal for sign up and to begin engaging more specifically in the work that we're going to be proposing. And then briefly, I'll touch on meetings. We have really been excited by the success so far of the discussion here, and we hope to repeat this in the future. Our vision is that the ICDA will meet annually to report on progress and continue to develop plans to address the continuing evolution of the M2M2M challenge. We don't believe, none of us believe, that this is a challenge that will be easily solved, and so our goal will be to come together regularly as a community and assess what's been done, what's been learned, and then where we should go from there. These annual meetings, I think we've all, or at least I've been very excited by how many folks have been able to join us on the live stream, so we do plan to make these live streamed for everyone to join. And this is still under discussion, but we are hopeful that we'll be able to go to Copenhagen in April or May of 2020 to kick off the next meeting, hopefully to be able to present recommendations that have been made a few months earlier in that year and work that's ongoing to get those recommendations started. So stay tuned. Again, if you're on our mailing list, you'll be receiving more information from us pretty soon about this. And with that, I'm going to just come back to the central challenge, M2M2M challenge. We are coming together. This is a big organizational, operational, scientific engagement lift, right? And you all are here after rearranging your schedules and really making an effort to be here with us, as well as folks who are on the live stream. We really are hopeful that all of that effort is going to enable us to move forward as a community, making progress in this space. And so I'm really excited to hear where the discussion goes today, as we've been thinking about this yesterday, last night in discussions informally, as well as the discussion from the sessions that's going to be following me today. This is an exciting and evolving discussion, and I am really excited to work together with all of you and members of the community who are listening online and others who are excited to be engaged to keep working on this together. So with that, I'm going to acknowledge a few people. I have a team of two folks at the Broad Institute who have pretty much been the logistical operational arm of this whole meeting, Amy and Minna. So would you all just actually clap with me? Because they've really made it all possible and made it work, as well as many interactions with vendors and all of the different things that go into running a meeting like this and making it happen. I also want to call out our founding members. This is a group of folks who met in Oxford last year, and this is really where some of the key ideas came from that have resulted in what is now the ICDA. And these folks, I think we would not be where we are today without these folks participating in that meeting and bringing their scientific expertise and their ideas and their engagement. So I really am grateful that many of them are here with us this meeting as well, and that they were participants in that meeting. As I mentioned, I'm really grateful for the organizing committee for their engagement with this whole process, and especially for Eric and Cecilia, who have been helping to steer the ship. And then I do want to mention our co-host, the NIH, and especially Carolyn Hutter, who has been very helpful thinking about this meeting and about what the next steps might be coming out of this meeting from the NIH, as well as the Wellcome Trust, who has provided funding for previous meetings of ours and has been very supportive. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you all for coming out again, and I would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Hi, Rick Wycheck, NIEHS. You probably said this, I just missed it. In terms of the timelines, when do you expect to have a fleshed out white paper so that we can take this forward and start proposing funding mechanisms?
Thanks, yeah. I think that is not something I said explicitly here, but we did, I think, mention in the white paper that our goal or our hope is that we would have some recommendations around January of 2020. That'll obviously be dependent on how we're able to get input and that kind of thing, but that's our goal.
There, let's see. Oh, right. Yes, I did it. I know, technically challenged. Could you comment a bit on interactions with other groups? I mean, obviously, I'm involved in the 100,000 Cohorts Consortium mentioned yesterday, but there's GA4GH and a number of others. So how are we going to do that interdigitation?
Yeah, thank you. This is a great question. We're very excited to collaborate and work together with the groups that are doing related work in this space. We've been really grateful that you've been able to join from IHCC, that Ewan is going to speak in a little bit, and as a member of, or as the steering committee chair of GA4GH. I would really be very interested to hear if you have ideas of engagement that you would be hoping for us to pursue. I think our goal is not to duplicate efforts, right? And so I think ultimately, if there are ways we can move forward with that in a way that really benefits all of the different related organizations, that would be the ideal, right?
Yeah, no, I agree, but not only not duplicate, but that there tends to be, when organizations are trying to distinguish themselves, they tend to move away from the areas where they're most likely to interact, and I think that would be a shame as well. So it seems the 100,000 Cohorts Consortium has a lot of emphasis on environment and non-genetic factors, and also has a lot of cohorts that don't have any genetic data at all. But to the degree that that group can help you identify groups who might have, the potential for providing cases or data or whatever, we certainly could do that.
Yeah, thanks. That sounds, I would love to talk more about that. I think as we think about this central challenge, moving from maps to mechanisms to medicine, we will absolutely be able to align and I think really work together to move forward with groups that are engaging cohorts at that level, for instance, to really move us, this consortium, the ICDA, through that, the process of defining that central challenge and solutions to that challenge.
Terry, do you think it would be useful to have a few designated liaisons between the two groups?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think.
Question is whether there will be liaisons or an idea for liaisons.
I think so, and I think we probably should have a couple people from this group attend the IHCC and GA4GH meetings, which I know already happens, and likewise come to these meetings. Maybe have some sprinkling of people on working groups, especially those that seem to interact where we can move forward together rather than separate.
So maybe during the coffee break, the little clutch could go to Liao or Sorry, did anybody not hear me?
I think online they didn't hear you.
Oh, I apologize. Right, I'm not loud enough to be heard online.
So to recap that, I think our goal will be to, we'll chat even before this meeting ends, see if we can identify some folks who might be able to, and I think that a lot of, there are some connections already, right? There are folks who overlap some of these organizations, so we can think about how to leverage them.
Hi, I'm Amy Lossie at the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and one, sort of component of this that I see missing is I don't see interaction and planned interaction with patient organizations. And so one of the things I was thinking about would be like the Genetic Alliance that Sharon Terry runs, and really starting to interact with that group from the get-go. And I think they would be a really good additional box in there, including in addition to the funders box and the pharma box. And so I just wanted to sort of put that in there.
Thanks so much, that's a great idea.
So if there aren't more questions, and we have a few minutes before we're starting the
Yeah, we have a
next
couple minutes.
topic, I just wanted to anticipate our closing discussion. Cecilia and I are going to lead a closing discussion, and it really is on what Rachel was just talking about. This is about the M2M2M bottleneck. We made huge progress opening up the pipe with the genome, with the variants, with GWASs, but we have a bottleneck now. We've been very good at opening bottlenecks, but it takes crowbars and other things to kind of open up the pipe. The conversation this afternoon is very much about how that could be done concretely. So it's no longer about it would be good to do this and good to do that in general terms, because like when you have to open up a pipe, there's nothing philosophical in general. It's what actions can we take? What projects could we start? There have been a bunch of things floating around. How can we connect all enhancers to all promoters? Anybody opposed to having the full enhancer promoter connection map? No, but how in the world would we do that? Anybody opposed to knowing what all of the 30 million common variants in the human population do with respect to gene expression in every tissue in the human genome? Probably not. But how in the world would we do that? What kinds of projects might pilot that and get us to the point where we feel confidence? I think something that is important to remember is when we look backward at projects that worked, they seem so clear and obvious in retrospect. The only advantage of being old enough now to have lived through them all is that I can testify they were very, very vague when they started and only became clear and obvious in retrospect. And that the work of this ICDA is to go through that same sort of clarification of, is this a really important thing and how could we do it? Another really important thing to say in advance of our discussion this afternoon is that maybe as compared to the past where we moved forward on individual projects that might sometimes seem monolithic, it's pretty clear that it's not going to be one single such project. There'll be multiple different things, each one of which is going to have to be clear, building a vibrant ecosystem. That doesn't mean 1,000 things, but it might be that there are 10 really substantial things that have to get done. And the real advantage of this time is it's also time to integrate. Many of the past projects, encodes, other things, they were specific things that worked in their own box. But now a lot of this challenge will be being able to transcend those boxes. So finding things, but making sure that they're integrative across the various aspects of the challenge. So one or two people said to me, is this everything? It seems like no, it's not. It really is around that. How do we make it easy to go from the 70,000 mapped loci to understanding the genetic targets that they have, the pathways that they trigger in the cells, the physiological pathways, and the pieces we need to be able to help the development of medicine. And medicine doesn't just mean medications in a bottle. It means clinical practice. deploying polygenic risk scores, other things. That's our conversation for the afternoon, and since we had a few minutes, I figured I wanted to put that charge down, and I will hand to Cecilia to see if you would add any further exhortations that people should be thinking about over the course of the day.
So my reflection on yesterday is that the individual projects will have a joint goal, and several of the speakers talked to that, but I think we sort of have a tendency to look at the individual projects and forget that if you're going to populate every nucleotide in the genome with functional information to lend itself to the M2 challenge, for me that sort of reduces a dimensionality and makes the goal a little bit clearer. So I think that's one way of putting a handle to it that maybe will help people as a thinking framework. I don't know if you agree.
No, very much. And the only thing we haven't both said, but came up a lot yesterday, and I think is very important, is to solve that goal, it will be necessary to engage the world more broadly. We will need to have, amongst other things, human genetic studies going on in other parts of the world. It's the right thing to do to be inclusive, but it's also the scientifically necessary thing. That the science compels that we do such things, but it means we have to organize so that the projects are done in such a way that they are as transformative as past projects have been. And so we're very excited to have representation from parts of the world here that have usually not been represented in genetic studies, and have as an important dimension asking, what can we do and learn from such studies that will move this forward?
Can I just ask, what you had mentioned work groups. How are you envisioning splitting this tasking out, and how many work groups are you thinking we're going to have? And how will we integrate once we are disintegrated?
Right. So current thinking, which should always be open to adaptation, was in writing the white paper. There were already 3 working groups set up. The first around the general topic of human cohorts. Maybe that's the MAPS part. The second around this variance to function thing. Essentially, the first and the second of the 2 large sessions yesterday were the subjects of those 2 working groups. And we've got chairs for the working groups and some members, and we'll reach out to try to expand those. And then we want online to make sure that everybody who signs up as a member from ICDA, even if they never came to this meeting and only watched online or only heard about it, from a friend, has an opportunity to provide input into that discussion. So we will have a way on the web for people to say, here are what I think are the most important things. So even though we have to have a finite work group do the work, because it can't be an unbounded thing, we want everybody to be, part of, affiliated with any working group they want to. So those are 2. A third is this kind of medicine work group, mechanisms to medicine working group. And there we've got, again, leadership for that, and we're going to try to expand that. So those are the 3 big working groups. I think there's a cross-cutting group thinking about data platforms, for example. There's a cross-cutting group thinking about data governance and ethics. These are important sorts of things. And then I think many people from biopharma should come together and make sure they specifically say what is needed with regard to drug development. Because I think it's important to get that input, because it's increasingly clear that in the end, if we're going to help patients, we want to accelerate the processes, including drug development and clinical translation, and that starts early in the process. So at the moment, that's what we're thinking, but I think we reserve the right to create additional working groups, and the idea would be that over the next 3 months, these groups begin to work. My hope is they would begin to put partial products on the web to get input, and that the oversight and the connective tissue will be the organizing committee that'll have responsibility for kind of taking a look at all of that and making sure it fits together. We want this to be as much of a community-driven process, and at the same time, there have to be some necks on the line to deliver. I see Mark McCarthy signaling that he might like this microphone.
I just had one comment which came up in the organizing committee last night, is that breaking things down into working groups is a great idea, but we don't want those to become siloed, because otherwise, in some ways, we're just perpetuating a lot of what's gone on before. And the clue is in the two. It's maps. It's not maps, mechanisms, and medicines. It's maps too. So I think it's important that any working group developing projects reaches out to the other working groups and actually prioritizes those projects that are appealing to more than one working group, because that's actually what we really want to foster.
I think that's clearly the spirit. It'll be the balance of some of people taking responsibility for working, but then making sure it's of a whole that's connected.
So I'm Ewan. I'm Ewan Burney from the European Bioinformatics Institute. I'm sorry I wasn't here yesterday. I followed it on Twitter on the plane over, so I feel like I was here in spirit. And maybe this is so obvious that we don't need to state it, but I think it's very important to realize that there's an awful lot of different sets of groups and people to bring together around this, and therefore one needs to think about this in a productive but ultimately federated way. Federated both because of the ethics and the restrictions around human data, but also federated in the scientific way that each group has to kind of bite off a substantial piece, but not the whole thing, and then they need to hand it over in an integrated way. And that federation really gets executed by straightforward databases with clear access rules. Ideally, when there's no need for any restriction, there is no restriction. It's worldwide shared. When there is a need for restriction, then as easy as those restrictions can make it. I think that should be a key founding principle, and that's, oddly enough, what the end result of this is to create data sets that help enable future scientists build on top of us. This is a multi-decade task. We will not snap our fingers and solve everything in one go. So that may be obvious, but I want to make it explicit because I just think it's absolutely critical to the success of endeavors like this.
Yeah, I want to endorse that. We did, Ewan, in the opening session, use the words federated data ecosystem many times because, and I think one of our slides specifically invoked the GA4GH because, to Terry Manolio's point, this is an area where happily we don't have to duplicate the many things GA4GH is doing, but we do want to work closely with GA4GH and may come to you with questions of, how is GA4GH covering something that we need? So that's why we're grateful you're here.
So to follow up on that, we have a real problem here because of GDPR. So how do we access our colleagues on that side of the fence? Oh,
well, let's talk to a colleague on the other side of the pond.
So I think Bartha is here somewhere. Bartha. GDPR is complicated, but we're going to end up probably, and I just think everybody's got to get used to this, many of the big data sets we will be visiting, we will not be aggregating or downloading. And that's just get over it, live with it. It is doable. I now have seen bits of research come through all of this. One just has to mentally shift your head towards the point that scientists will visit data sets with their analysis. No, virtually, by virtual machines, yeah.
All right, I see a lot of folks standing to engage in this discussion.
But we got to.
And I do want to make sure that we give the speakers today, we will have a session that focuses on some of these topics later, so hopefully we can continue the discussion then. Sorry, Bartha. Do you have a last comment?
I just wanted to answer. I did check after yesterday's afternoon session about Francis Collins' GDPR issue, and the NIH as a non-commercial entity is not covered by the Privacy Shield. I think that was his question. NIH and any other non-commercial entity in the United States or any other country has 4 other routes that they can use, as I think I won't go into details, as Ewan just mentioned, in order to continue international data transfer. Also, ethics is not about and hopefully neither law, about always constraining. It's going to also be about enabling, and I think the ethical arguments for data sharing and the human rights arguments for data sharing are even stronger than the GDPR.
Thank you. I wouldn't like to argue that GDPR has been well written, but I think that there are various interpretations of it, and the legal interpretation that we've had from leading counsel for UK Biobank is far less negative than the way in which it's being described here. And we have no concerns with respect to UK Biobank of providing pseudonymized data from UK Biobank, and that is not inconsistent with GDPR. So I think that one needs to be careful about over-interpretation. And I think that this could be one of the areas in which this group could be helpful, as also with the 100,000 cohort consortium around ensuring that we do have an appropriate, permissive approach to the interpretation of GDPR that is in the interests of the participants who've given consent to join these studies.
Yeah, we will work through GDPR here, but just not today.
I just wanted to add, from the Finnish perspective, I don't think we've really had much difficulty at all with exchange of samples with the United States, with providing access to researchers in the United States to the resources. And I think it's exactly as Rory said, this is not an insurmountable burden. And I guess I'd just also throw in that we haven't, in this room, with all of the projects we've been discussing doing, actually proposed anything that would require the exchange of individual level sensitive data across national boundaries. So let's not worry too much about engineering solutions to problems until we foresee that they're actually part of what we're doing here.
Great. Thanks all for this great discussion to start us off. We will have opportunities to continue as we go forward. Now I'm going to invite Michael Dunn up to the stage to chair the next session.